When it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers Mount Rushmore, narrowing down decades worth of legends down to 4 players almost feels like an impossible task. Apologies in advance to Terry Bradshaw, but you, sir, are on the outside looking in. And that alone tells you how competitive the field is. If Terry Bradshaw not being included bothers you a bit or might surprise you, you might not want to hear that Jack Lambert or Jack Ham aren't going to be brought up either. When I think about the overall history of this team, it only seems fair to break it into eras. The first 4 decades did have some big contributors, but they didn't really have any on-field success until the 1970s. There were some down years in the 80s and 90s, and then a resurgence in the 2000s. So to tell the whole story of the franchise, we need total representation from both championship eras and a representative from each side of the ball. With that being said, let's begin with Mean Joe Greene, the face of the franchise, really even to this day. Look, I wasn't born until 1985, so I really didn't get to see him play, but the reverence that this man has from fans and players across multiple generations tells me everything that I need to know. I've been taught that without Joe Greene, there is no steel curtain. There's no Steelers defensive identity. Joe Greene helped create the Steelers culture that's still in place today. Joe Greene is a no-brainer selection for inclusion on the Pittsburgh Steelers Mount Rushmore. So now let's move on to the offensive side of the ball. Even casual fans would say that Pittsburgh Steelers playing style is a blue-collar, hard-nosed, run-the-ball-down-your-throat type of team. That didn't happen by accident. It's no coincidence. It happened because of Franco Harris. The immaculate reception alone puts him in the conversation, but it's important to know that Franco Harris was more than a one-play wonder. Franco was a tough, physical running back who earned hard yards. The man won 4 Super Bowls and took home MVP in Super Bowl IX. Franco helped establish an image of what it meant to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. To this day, he's still the franchise rushing leader and one of only 3 players who's had his jersey number retired. Franco is an easy choice to represent the offensive side of the ball from the 1970s dynasty. All right, we've locked in our 2 players from the 70s era. And of course, there are many other deserving candidates to be included in the Mount Rushmore, but there can only be 4. So now let's take a look at 2 guys who helped bring the team back to prominence in the 2000s. Ben Roethlisberger basically holds every meaningful Steelers passing record. Sure, he may have played a different game than Terry Bradshaw did, but the story of the Steelers simply cannot be told without Big Ben. Ben helped the franchise turn the corner at the quarterback position after nearly 20 years of stopgap solutions, a situation the team has unfortunately found itself back in since his departure. Ben brought a toughness and winning mentality to the team, leaving everything on the field and often single-handedly keeping the Steelers in games himself. When Big Ben had the ball in his hands with 2 minutes left, Steelers fans felt confident, and that's a unique position to find yourself in. Ben wasn't just a prolific passer, he was one of the most difficult quarterbacks in NFL history to bring down. Time and time again, you'd see him extending plays, escaping sacks, and making throws that in hindsight, we may have been taking for granted. On the other side of the ball, the defense had a player whose style we had never seen before, and we might never see again. Troy Polamalu was one of a kind. He might be the most dynamic player that I had ever seen with my own 2 eyes. Countless quarterbacks have said, Troy was one of the rare players that you had to account for before every single snap. Polamalu had the ability to take over games, showing up in moments that always seemed to matter the most. For example, the 2008 AFC Championship game, a game I was fortunate enough to attend. When he intercepted Joe Flacco and crossed the goal line, I swear you could feel the entire stadium shaking under your feet. It was an incredible moment, and I will never forget. How many highlights are there of Troy leaping over the offensive line, making an impossible catch, shedding blockers, or flying across the field in ways that we've never seen before? Spot number 4 proudly goes to a 2-time Super Bowl champion, Defensive Player of the Year, Hall of Famer, and first-class human being, Troy Polamalu. These 4 players perfectly represent the tradition, the foundation, the identity, and the dominance of the Pittsburgh Steelers across multiple eras. For a guy like Bradshaw, I don't want this to come across as I'm dismissing him. He's obviously a candidate, but his relationship with the organization has always been a bit complicated. He's always been openly critical of the team. He skips almost every reunion or celebration or anniversary. It's almost like he's gone out of his way to disassociate himself with the team. The 4 players that I selected embody the traits of a Pittsburgh Steeler completely, and I'm not sure Bradshaw does that for me. Of course, there's also players, legends like Jack Ham, Mel Blount, Jack Lambert, Mike Webster, Hines Ward, Jerome Bettis. All of these men would be worthy choices for inclusion, and I appreciate them and respect them for their contributions to the franchise. But as Mount Rushmores go, there's only room for 4, and I have chosen who belongs. Let me know in the comments who I got right, who I got wrong, who you'd take off, or who you would put on. Thanks a lot for watching. I will see you on the next one.